Our next guest, Jim Murphy, knows what it takes to train like a pro athlete, not just the body, but also the mind. As a former pro baseball player turned coach, he's spent years helping athletes tap into calm, focus, and clarity under pressure. And he shared his findings with the world, but his book, Inner Excellence, flew under the radar for years until an accidental endorsement. NFL player A.J. Brown was spotted reading it on the sidelines during the playoffs in January. That photo went viral, and so did Murphy's book. He got a second shot at the big leagues. Now he's helping thousands of people, not just athletes, win from the inside out. And he joins us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. You're an Air Force brat. I'm an Air Force brat as well. So there's something we have in common there. Your dad was in the Air Force. You were born in Maryland, but raised in Seattle. Your dad met your mom in Japan. So kind of a worldly view in your household. You are the youngest of five siblings. Is that the youngest being the coddled child that didn't have to take care of himself, or the child that was forgotten about who had to take care of himself?
Well, I think mental toughness came from my being the youngest. That's probably the case.
Yeah, all right. You were a promising athlete, great at baseball and football. At an early age, you decided pro athlete was going to be your course.
Oh, yeah. I dreamed about it since I was little, 7, 8 years old. And then so getting drafted by the Cubs was a dream come true. And then losing it was my identity was completely lost.
Yeah, and that happens with so many athletes. And it's a kind of a slow burn, if you will, because what's great in high school can be average in college and less in the pros. As you advance, you find out how good you really are or how good you really aren't. But for you, it was a matter of an injury, too, or I say something that happened with your eyes as well, right?
That's right. Yeah, my dynamic visual acuity was gone. I wasn't able to follow baseball anymore, and so my career was over. So it was really devastating.
Yeah.
But as I look back, it was the best thing for me.
Yeah. As you look back, and there's so many different lessons in your book, and one of them is to look back and see the moment you're in at that time can teach you your greatest lesson. So many of us identify ourselves by external things like our job or who we're married to or what our children are doing, and that's what you found out is that your identity was lost because it was attached to something that was external, and you thought I gotta focus on purpose and what truly defines success. It can't be defined by a job or a skill. You got more interested in psychology. You have a psychology degree. You thought, let me take a deeper dive into this.
Yeah, I realized, as I went to the desert and where Inner Excellence was born, I realized that our greatest need is for unconditional love, and our greatest fear is rejection. And so if you want to optimize your life, and that's what Inner Excellence is, it's about self-mastery and optimizing your performance, but much more than performance, your whole life. It's really understanding what your heart deeply wants and how your subconscious mind works and how fear works. And it's kind of based on this idea that our greatest need is unconditional love and our greatest fear is rejection.
Yeah. When you reached out to get your master's at the University of British Columbia, you had a thesis and you interviewed people with Major League Baseball executives, coaches, players, but you asked one key question: what separates championship teams from the rest of the teams? I always tell people, when somebody wins the Super Bowl, for example, and they go, oh yeah, the other team lost, they're losers. Are they really losers? They came in second. They're right behind them, but there's a fine line that can make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the difference between the best and the rest is very, very small. And that's the biggest thing is belief. That's what separates everybody. And beliefs are feelings. And so what happens is most people are not they don't reach their potential because they're not ready to give up their past. If you want to be something that achieve great things, you have to be willing to give up your past and become someone you've never been before. And that's really scary.
Yeah. You have so many areas of where you experience things firsthand. First of all, like you said, losing your own identity, but also in coaching. In 2000, you coached the South African Olympic baseball team. It was the first and only appearance in Olympic baseball. Later, you coached in the minor leagues. What did you learn from that experience?
Well, I think like most people, I obsessed about being a superstar my whole life. And it was just I just really wanted really good results and circumstances so people would love me. And of course, I didn't think of it that way. I just thought I want to live the best possible life. And that life is me being rich and famous and making a lot of money and hitting a lot of home runs. And what I've realized since then is that what I really wanted was to feel fully alive. And so that's what Inner Excellence is. It's about pursuing absolute fullness of life by training your heart to love most, what's most empowering, and letting everything else be added to you.
Yeah, looking at the end goal, but didn't look at what it took to get to that end goal. And the value really is in kind of the journey, if you will. The inspiration for your book: you sold almost all that you owned, and you moved to Arizona, like you mentioned, living in solitude for a while and thinking. And you researched the answer to this question: how can an Olympian athlete perform with complete peace and confidence? Something that we know that Simone Biles went through a couple of Olympics ago.
Yeah, if you're focused on an outcome that you can't fully control, it's very scary and stressful. So that's why we got to focus on what we can control. With Inner Excellence, we have 4 daily goals, and it's all under the umbrella of learning and growing every day. We want to get 1% better every day. So the 4 daily goals is to give the best of what you have each day, knowing that some days it's not going to be very good. And then number 2 is to be present, because there's no fear in the present moment. Fear is a self-centered, in general, a self-centered, future-oriented thing. And then 3 is gratitude, because gratitude is directly linked to inner peace and inner strength.
Yeah.
And then number 4 is to focus on your routines and only what you can control.
And being okay with what you can't control. You revised your book to have broader appeal: Inner Excellence, Train Your Mind for Extraordinary Performance and the Best Possible Life. And you sold a few. That was good. You know, the biggest accomplishment was actually getting the book written, right? And you sold a few, but then there was that viral moment. How did you find out about it?
Yeah, I was actually in your neck of the woods. I was in Dallas, Texas, and leading an Inner Excellence retreat. And I was actually watching a different football game, Penn State play Notre Dame, a bowl game that had already happened. And then I looked at my phone and I see a bunch of messages. And it was actually a pretty somber week. That was January 12th, that first playoff game. A.J. Brown, I didn't know that he was reading the book at every game. I just saw him in uniform and with the book a few weeks earlier. So I had no idea he was bringing it to every game to get centered, and after every drive using it to get recentered. And so I found out on January 12th with everybody else.
Yeah. All right. So that book, he was using those tools, and people realize that it's not just for, super athletes. It can be for anyone in life. So you updated the tools to master thoughts and emotions that we can all use. And some of the top tools from the book, one is just these simple things that people just realize can make the world of difference. One is pause, breathe, choose.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that we face is our ego. For most people, it's a lack of freedom. They're afraid to fail, afraid to look foolish, and so we always want to check in and see how am I doing. And there's so much coming at us every day from all over social media, and our minds get cluttered. So we need to learn to slow down and focus on our purpose, not more so than our circumstances.
Yeah, and as you mentioned before, not fear-based, but faith-based. All right, self-image reprogramming, consciously reprogramming our subconscious beliefs, and that's where your psychology background comes in. So much is dictated by our subconscious that we're so not aware of.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that's so important is to make sure you monitor the language that you use in the moment. You never want to say something that's like, I'm struggling with so-and-so, I'm struggling with my putting for a golfer, or I'm in a slump for a baseball player. You would never say that, because that's talking about the past as if it's present tense. We always want to make sure that one of the disciplines of Inner Excellence is to speak the truth about the past, to create possibilities in the future. So you would say, in the past, I struggled with my putting or my hitting or whatever it was, but in this moment, I'm free.
Yeah, and changing that internal dialogue, as you say, and it could change the external results. Okay, the daily check-in practice, what is that?
Yeah, so every day, at the end of the day, we want to look back on our day and see, what did I learn and how did my ego affect me? Did I take anything personal today? Was I in self-protection, or was I walking in love or fear? What human nature is self-centered, and that leads to fear. And so we always want to check in and say, where did I walk in fear today? Where did I walk in self-protection, and where was I offended or taking things personal? Because that's the greatest limitation that we have, is our own self in that way.
Yeah. Jim, a lot of books, you take it, you read it, and you put it away. This is one of those books that I would always keep close. It's on the nightstand, right? It's on the nightstand, it's in the bathroom, it's everywhere, because it has such great reminders in here, and we almost have to train our brain, to your point, to practice those things. And it's great for everybody, not just athletes, not just professionals, not just adults. I think this is awesome for kids as well. In fact, I'm giving it to my son. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. You can purchase the latest copy of Inner Excellence, Train Your Mind for Extraordinary Performance and the Best Possible Life wherever books are sold. When it had that viral moment, it went shot. I think it sold like 200,000 copies in the next few days. All right.